Hey everyone, it's the Angry Honey Badger, and it is time for another episode of League Talks. If you have a question for a future episode, you can send me a private message on YouTube, labeling the subject as League Talks and asking me a question that way. The game in the background today is an all-random, all-mid game from a stream not too long ago, so go ahead and enjoy that going on in the background while we discuss some of your questions. My first question today is a question that I have had asked quite a few times lately. I'm going to try to explain it the best I can to give you the right answer, but it is slightly confusing, kind of, but not really. And I can't remember if we've gone over this or not, but for the most part, you know what, we're going to try it, we're going to give it a shot. This question is, basically to sum it up, how does the ELO or ELO system work? Somebody asked, because the other day they mentioned that they had one more win than loss, but they were only like 1,100. And they saw someone else who had more losses than wins and was a 1,400. And I gave them the best answer I could, and I'm going to go over this for the most part, but basically, to think of the ELO system, it's very similar, at least the way I understand it, to it being like a true rating system, which you will see in other video games. You may have seen these in the past in other online games on Xbox or PlayStation. You may see like a true skill number, and basically the way this works is, whenever you win a game against someone lower than you, number-wise, you don't really gain as much because it's just basically showing that you beat someone who was better than you, so you don't move up as far. And this is kind of a similar issue with this system in League, is basically every time you beat someone who's below you, yes, you'll get points, but not as many. And if you beat someone who's technically got a higher number than you, then you'll gain more points. Not saying that you'll jump in front of them, but you'll gain more points. So this is how that kind of works. So let's just go with some even or simple numbers. Let's say you're 1,200 in this game, and you beat a 1,400. You're probably going to get more points for that than if the 1,400 was to beat you being the 1,200. They probably only get, let's say, 10 points, and let's say you get 20 points for beating them. So you get more points dependent upon usually the quality of player that you are against. That's kind of how this system works. There's lots of other little equations in it, and it really is actually an equation with a bunch of numbers that have to do with W plus 400 plus X plus 4. It's just this crazy weird system. So I'm not going to actually go over the equation. It's got N's and W's and D's and 4's and R's. It's really, really weird, to say the least. But for the most part, that's kind of how it works. So you can read about it actually on Wikipedia. There is an entry about the system because they do use it in chess. And it was named after the man. His last name actually is Elo. So, or Elo, or however you say it. I'm not exactly sure. So that is sort of how this system does work, and it's just, just think of it as a true rating system, basically. You're going to gain more points, basically, on the quality of wins that you get. Another just little example of how this system's worked for me and worked against me in the past. When I've played with friends who were about the same level as me last season, I was gaining anywhere from 10 to 20 points per win. I then played a ranked game with a friend who was, I think, 800, and I was, I think, 14-something or 1,500 at the time last season, and I remember we won that game, and I think I got 1 point for the win, because they're not going to reward me for beating kids who are such a low level. So I can get tons of wins playing with low elo kids, but I'm only going to move up 1 or 2 points a game. So it's based off of the quality of win, basically how good the team you beat are, and that's why it sums you up with people near your levels, so you can all equally jump up or move backwards, because if you were, let's say, all 800 to 900 to 1,000, you're playing against 1900s and 2,000, then whenever you win, you jump tons, which when it makes sense, because then you jump too far and then you'd fall back too far. So that's why you're queued up who are similar to you, so you can either move up slowly or move down slowly. And that is how the system works for the most part. Hopefully that kind of clears up how that system goes. My next question comes in today from Zeta556. They asked me a couple questions that I can cover. Their first one being, do you have an EU West account? If you do, can you do some ARAMs on there with your subs? I do have an EU West account. It isn't called Angry Honey Badger. It's a different name. It's Angry Growler Bear, because somebody took Angry Honey Badger from me. And I do have one, and I have done ARAM over there once. I don't do it as often because I need to have the time set up differently, since everybody's about 8 hours ahead of me over in Europe, so I have to stream at different times, so I don't get quite as good of a turnout unless I do it on the weekends, and hopefully I try to, but it's still tough. So yes, I do have one, and I do ARAMs with the EU West people when I can. I know it's not as often. Hopefully that will change in the future. But yes, I do have an EU West, and I do plan on doing some ARAMs for them. Their next question is, how can you only have about, well, apparently this is an old question, because he says, how do you only have about 9,000 subs? You deserve 200,000. It all just takes time. Now I do have over 12,000, and by the time you see this video, it'll probably be more than that. Who knows? But I'm picking up more steam as a YouTuber, which has been great. You guys have been awesome for the most part, and I want to thank all of you for being subscribers. It does mean a lot to me. It's really awesome that I am getting slightly more popular now, and yeah, hopefully you guys keep enjoying the content that I create. I'm gonna keep trying to make stuff that you like. I know everybody does keep asking for build videos, and you don't need to. I know what you guys want, and I plan on making it. So just give me the time I need to make it. It does take time. I do have a full-time job and stuff, so I do what I can. And then the last question is, do you have Skype and do you add people? I do have Skype. I don't really add people because I did at the beginning of my YouTubing added everyone who sent me friend requests in League, and I did add people who did add me in Skype. The only problem that I have with this now is I don't know who anyone is, and it started just getting out of control for the most part. So I kind of had to limit both of those things because I'm just confused. I'd get calls from people I had no idea who they were because I'd only talked to them maybe once, and I have like 50 friend requests every day, and all my boxes are full, and I was full on League for friend requests too. I couldn't even add any people, so I have had to limit that, but that is why I do all the ARAMs, so I can play with you guys and play and chat with you. So hopefully that does help make up for some of that, but unfortunately I can't really add everybody. It would be cool, but it would be very confusing for me as well. My next question comes in from someone whose name I can't really figure out. Anyways, their question is, hello, do we really have to know how to play every position in LoL? I'm struggling as a jungler. I mean, if you're playing with all your friends and you're really dedicated to your roles, then you probably don't, but I would highly suggest it, especially if you ever decide to walk into the ranked area, because you're not going to get every champion you want when you're playing ranked, especially if you go into solo queue. Now, if you're playing with a team, yeah, learn one position and learn it perfectly. That is going to be awesome, and it's going to definitely help your team out when you all are skilled in your specific area. It's going to be very helpful. But if you're jumping into solo queue, if you're just playing blind pick, it is very important to try to learn all the roles. That's what I've done, and I think it helps me out in other roles as well, because you just kind of feel like you can do different things with champions that you wouldn't really consider when you're playing them. I know it kind of sounds weird, but you might try some weird things with AD carries that you normally wouldn't if you only played AD carries, because sometimes I'll occasionally, like, I don't want to say play him like a bruiser, but I'll just fight with them like a bruiser, because you get comfortable doing other things, and then you find out different things that their kits can do to help you become a better player. So I think it is important to try to learn every role. I know a lot of people struggle with junglers, and that's why I do have my tips for jungling page, or my little video. Hopefully that does help people out. I know a lot of people complain they don't have the right runes for jungling. I'll be honest, you only need one set of seals. You need the armor seals. That's really all you need, because nowadays with Season 3 changes, the jungle is the same for everyone. Basically at the start, you're just going to be picking up that Hunter's Machete and Pots, and then building that into your first correct item that you need. So jungling has kind of, I don't know, it's gotten easier and harder. You just got to make sure you got a good leash at level 1 on whatever buff you're trying to take. But other than that, just, it takes time a little bit, yes, and you'll figure it out. And you'll figure out when ganking makes sense for you. But for the most part, I know a lot of people struggle, quote-unquote, with jungling, but just build some defensive items a little bit. So give it a shot, though, and learn some roles, because it is very, very helpful to be well-rounded in this game. It really does show better skill later on when you do know how to play all the positions really well. The next question comes in today asking, do you think every champion is balanced? If not, which champions do you think need a buff or nerf? Well, this is a big argument for the most part on and off in League of Legends. Everybody's always asking, who does everybody think is overpowered, and then they usually play that champion. Who do we think's underpowered because they're not played? And as much as I'd say yes, some of this is apparent, you can kind of see some of this, the game actually is really well balanced, right? It does a good job at keeping the game close. Yes, occasionally something does get messed up. There was that one time the Yorick patch came out and he had double stats for like 3 hours until they hotfixed it, and he was just a ridiculous monster to even fight. But for the most part, yes, the game is balanced. Now, whether or not you think a certain champion is balanced, maybe because, yes, they're strong, or maybe they were just super fed that game, but it also comes down to how well you can counter a champion. Because I know a lot of people, and we've talked about this in past League Talks, they think that Darius and Katarina are overpowered. And I would agree Darius is towards the end of overpowered. He's up towards the top of very strong champions, but that's because his ultimate is, that true damage, quote-unquote, I call it nonsense. And that cooldown on it is kind of ridiculous. But as for Katarina, I mean, she is easy to counter if you have crowd control. She's really not tough to beat when you have some and you use it correctly. Granted, she does do a lot of damage, but that's because if you can counter her crowd control, she just dies. I mean, there's not a lot she can do. So, give or take, yes. Is everybody balanced? No, not perfectly. But is it close enough to not really have to worry about it? Yes. Some champions just do outlane other champions better just based on their kits. This does happen. I found this out recently with Vi a lot going top. She's a decent top, and I like her up there. She's fun, but she struggles against Wukong and Darius quite a bit because they have decent, easy evades and rake-ins, and she just, Vi has to be in everyone's face to deal damage, and that's kind of similar to a few other champions. She can't really poke from too much distance. Her E has a little bit, but not too much. So, balanced or not balanced, for the most part, I try to talk about that in the builds a little bit when I am playing them. Now, granted, some of the builds have been changed, or some of the characters have been buffed or nerfed since, but unless something gets really drastically changed, nothing ever really needs too much of a huge update. Another question I'll go over right now, it's not been asked by anybody specifically for League Talks, but it's been a question on a lot of videos, is do you think you need to remake all of your builds because they're outdated? No, I don't actually. I think a lot of them have actually stayed the same. I've gone through and tried to update some of the masteries or direct some of you to Facebook to see all my masteries pages to help you there. I've taken out all the builds, I think for the most part, that said Force of Nature, and I've put another item in its slot that I would recommend getting if I was building Force of Nature, or if I got a Heart of Gold. Basically, I'm just saying pick up the Giant's Belt first in the Omen when you're probably building that. So I know you're not getting that gold for 5, but the important part was you were getting a lot of health. So for the most part, I've gone back and updated the little things. Also, instinctively, you guys can use your own thoughts on how you build, because everybody builds slightly different, to what you need to just shuffle in its place for whatever item, quote-unquote, may be missing. So, no, not everything does need to be updated. Somebody asked me about my Ezreal build the other day, like, it's outdated update, and I went back and played Ezreal. It's the same exact build. I don't build any of the new items on it because I don't think he needs it. It's still Triforce, Bloodthirster, Infinity Edge, and then some attack speed. I still build him the same way. It still works amazingly. I'm still going legendary with him almost every time I play him. So, no, not everything is out of date. The only one that's really out of date for the most part right now is Kog'Maw, because the first item I was building on him was a Blood Razor. And since there's no Blood Razor anymore, it's unfortunate, but basically nowadays I'll just make sure that I pick up a Blade of the Rune King on him. So, yes, that build for the most part is the most outdated, and I plan on updating it soonish. That's why I did get rid of the Kale build and redid her not too long ago, because my first build, which was Kale, I also built that on her as well, so it needed a little bit of an update as well. So, going back to this question of, is it balanced? For the most part, the game is pretty balanced. I know we don't see Poppy or Karma a lot, but those champions do a lot of damage. They're just not played as much because I don't think we see a lot of people playing them or having as much success with them. But once you get good with Poppy and Karma, man, they can wreck face. So you gotta be careful with a few of those champions you don't actually see too often. So that's my input on it. Like I said, Riot does a great job of keeping the game fairly close. Yes, occasionally someone's too strong when they come out. They do their best in the public beta environment, but to be completely honest, guys, I would not pay attention too much to new champions in there until they are officially out, because I remember when Rengar was coming out, and he was just crappy in the beta environment. Nobody liked him at all because he couldn't jungle and he couldn't top. Like, he was just bad. But then he came out and he was really awesome. He's been nerfed a few times since then. He's still a good champion, but when he came out in the public arena and everybody was playing him in the beta, he was, I don't want to say unplayable, but he didn't do a lot of damage, or at least a lot of people reacted to him as being underpowered. But obviously they were wrong when he came out. So don't always listen to everything you see or hear in the beta. A lot of people ask me about the beta. I don't pay attention to new stuff coming out until it is out, because, like I'm saying, it's not part of the real game yet. So just kind of hold your horses and don't always believe everything you hear from what's coming from in there. You can just see what their abilities do, but don't really listen to what people are doing with that champion, because a lot of weird stuff happens in there, and so is a lot of trolling, I found out. So just my little bit of input on a few things there, and hopefully that answers some questions that a few of you may or may not have. Well, that's pretty much going to cover, I think, everything today for League Talks. If you have any questions, like I said, send me a private message on YouTube labeling the subject as League Talks, and you can ask me your question that way. But other than that, guys, I'll just see all of you in the next video.